for many reasons. I think to myself, how can I make sure that there's a group of people who are holding the information that I have put together for my 28 years in this work, and to bring that information about the dangers of GMOs and Roundup to the world. And there's two specific categories: healthcare practitioners and health educators. Some of you are healthcare practitioners, all of you are health educators. So I get to share with you information that I deeply want you to own and know and use and bring to your friends and customers or clients, because this needs to be well known in order for the momentum that we have created to continue. Now, when I think about what it is that you'll want when you're dealing with someone that you want to educate, you want to bring them into healthy eating, you want to bring them into products that are healthy, that overlaps with my thinking. I want to bring people into food that has no GMOs and no Roundup, which includes your products and includes products that are organic. And then you also have products to help detox, rebuild, and repair from exposure to GMOs and Roundup. So I decided to create an entirely new PowerPoint that I've never done before, oriented on your experience. And I'm going to basically find effective ways to recommend an organic diet and then a glyphosate detox. Woo! You interested? So first I'm going to ask you a hard question. I'd like you to rate yourself from 1 to 100. How vigilant you are. How much organic or not, or organic or similar, the same principles, no GMOs, no Roundup, no sprays. What percentage of your diet fits that category? Now, this is everything you eat. When you go over to a friend's house, when you go out to a restaurant, when you stay at a hotel. Okay? So how many people are, be honest here, 0 to 20, and many people can't get organic with food where they are. Raise your hand if you're 0 to 20. Raise your hand. Don't, okay. A few of you. Okay. 20 to 40. Raise your hand. Okay. More. 40 to 60. Even more. 60 to 80. That could be the big popular one. 80 to 100. Okay, so 60 to 80 is a little more popular than 80 to 100. Good. So now when you switched to organic or its equivalent, how many, for those that are more in the 60 to 100 category, how many people noticed an improvement in health? Raise your hand. A tremendous number. If you're in the live stream, lots of hands. Okay, give me an example of something that got better. Allergies. How many people noticed improvement in allergies or food sensitivity? Lots of hands. Lots of hands. Next one. Inflammation. Skin problems. Mental problems. Diabetes. Depression. Digestion. Better sleep. You know, I know this list. I've done this at 150 lectures, and everyone has the same list. In fact, when I do it slowly, I say, okay, how many people digestion? And I look at how many digestion, how many people fatigue, how many people skin problems. And I had a sense of a relative ratio between them. So then I surveyed 3,256 people who subscribed to the Institute for Responsible Technology and said, what did you get better from? And I listed the 28 conditions that I had remembered from 150 lectures. And here they are. Digestive problems, always number 1, 85.2%. Fatigue, obesity, brain fog, depression and anxiety, allergies and sensitivity, memory and concentration, joint pain, seasonal allergies, gluten sensitivity, insomnia, etc. Take a picture. It is ridiculous. These are the common, these are the popular diseases. These are the ones that everyone's vying to get or get rid of. So now, as an activist, I will give a lecture on GMOs and Roundup to people that want to know about GMOs and Roundup. But as health educators, most people are interested in fixing what's wrong with them. That's where I'm going to go with this. Fixing what's wrong with them. So I'm not going to share with you how to give a lecture on GMOs and Roundup. I'm going to pick a few of these. And this list, by the way, was published and peer-reviewed and published in the International Journal of Human Nutrition and Functional Medicine. I have a URL, non-GMOimproveshealth.com. You can get to the summary, you can get to the article, Non-GMO Improves Health. And tonight, we're going, it is tonight, isn't it? We're going to look at a group of these disorders and see if someone says to you, I have a digestive problem, or I have low energy or insomnia or any of these, is there something that you can say to bring them into a healthier organic diet and then to help detox, rebuild, and repair from that exposure? Now, I'm going to start with digestion. That's always the number one. Many people describe problems with digestion getting better. And if you look at the list, digestive problems is 85.2%. Food allergies is 50%. Gluten sensitivity, 42%. Underweight, 6.5%. These are the percentages of people that report getting better from these disorders when they switched to a non-GMO and largely organic diet. And it wasn't just a slight improvement. If you look at digestion, 80% of the people that reported had either significant improvement, nearly gone, or completely recovered. And that's the case for all of them. The vast majority in the top reporting categories. So these are people that are very serious about changing their diet, made a difference. We did a survey, what about your pets? Same thing, digestion was top, 83.3% in pets compared to 85.2% in humans. Humans reported irritable bowel getting better, Crohn's disease, reflux, acid reflux, ulcers, gut pain, bloating. Farmers tell us that their animals got better from diarrhea or gut bacteria imbalance or intestinal damage, or on the contrary, when they introduced GMOs, these things happened. Veterinarians of large animals said these were the problems that came up almost immediately after GMOs were introduced. And I have a picture here of the stomach lining color of a cow that's been fed GMO versus non-GMO. I talked to a farmer's wife once. She said, I have seen inside the animals that are eating GMOs versus non-GMOs, and I will not feed any meat from animals fed GMOs to my children. It is disgusting. It smells. It's horrible. This is inside the gut of a cow where the botulism took off because glyphosate damages gut bacteria, including the gut bacteria that keeps the botulism bacteria at bay. Animal feeding studies show changes in gut bacteria, severe stomach inflammation, stomach lesions, excessive growth or damage of intestinal villi, reduced ability to digest proteins and minerals when animals are force-fed GMOs or Roundup. This is a hero of mine, Dr. Arpad Pusztai. He's no longer alive, but he did the most in-depth animal research study ever done with a grant from the UK government to figure out how to test for the safety of GMOs. When he described his results, he was fired from his job after 35 years and silenced with threats of a lawsuit. What he found that was his rats were fed genetically engineered potatoes. They developed potentially precancerous cell growth of the digestive tract, smaller brains, livers, and testicles, partial atrophy of the liver, damaged immune system. Here's the picture of intestinal walls comparing the non-GM fed with the GM. Here's the stomach lining. He told me, based on how he did his research, this was not because of the particular gene that was put into the potato. This came from the generic process of genetic engineering that's applied to all of the GMOs on the market. My friend, pediatrician Michelle Perro, looked at these pictures and said, uh-oh, this is what's happening to my children, to my my clients, and my patients. This is what's happening. If you look inside the intestines, the walls get damaged in the rats that are fed corn that's designed to be an insecticide to kill certain insects. How does it do it? By poking holes in the walls of their guts. And are we surprised that it's causing problems in rats? Here's the stomach on the right of pigs that were fed GM soy and corn compared to normal non-GM fed pigs on the left. Severe inflamed irritation and ulcers. Glyphosate damages the microvilli just like the Bt toxin. It suppresses digestive enzymes. The Bt toxin fragments microvilli, creates short microvilli. In human studies, guess what? That Bt toxin that's in that corn, when applied to human cells in a laboratory, poke the same type of holes it pokes into insects. Glyphosate is also an antibiotic. All these are related to digestion. So someone says to you, I have a digestion problem, and you're going over some of these things. Do you think they're starting to make a conclusion that maybe their digestive problem may be related to all the others that reported getting better from the same digestive problem that they're suffering from when they switched to organic? There was a study done on a human microbiome in something called the SHIME model, where they took the fecal matter of a 3-year-old, never been vaccinated, never had antibiotics, lived on organic food and a farm, and took that and put it into this fake digestive gut and fed it food for a while, organic, and then it put Roundup in, and they had such dramatic changes in the gut bacteria. I went over one of the scientists who oversaw the experiment, and I said, based on the impact in the gut bacteria, can you explain any one of these 28 conditions? And I went one by one, and each one he was able to explain how the changes in the gut bacteria alone could create or exacerbate every one of them. So this is an example of one change, foundational in health, the gut bacteria, that can lead to all these different diseases. It's one of the foundations that are damaged by glyphosate. Also, another foundation, it promotes leaky gut. Leaky gut is said to be the source of all disease, according to at least one Harvard study. Foundational. It also blocks mineral absorption. Glyphosate was originally sold as a descaling agent for industrial pipes and boilers because it binds with minerals, it chelates, so it strips it off the inside of the pipe. And so it binds with the minerals, making them undigestible, unavailable. When you take the minerals out, then that leads to a whole list of diseases. It's foundational. Some of you are already thinking, oh, I have products that may be able to supply some of the things that are missing. It damages the mitochondria. A friend of mine has a lab that looks with a high-powered microscope at mitochondria, puts a little glyphosate in, and it completely destroys it. The mitochondria, there's a cancer theory of mitochondria, there's an aging theory of mitochondria. Mitochondria is the energy of the body. When you don't have active mitochondria, you can have brain fog and fatigue and whatnot. All these things can break down. I went to a conference, functional medicine conference. It was 2 days just on the mitochondrial problems. It inhibits detoxification. If you take glyphosate, it blocks the normal channels of detoxification of the liver. The NRF2, the P450 cytochrome pathway, these are parts of the way that the liver and the rest of the body detox, which means all the other toxins that are normally brought out by those channels could stay in the system and do damage. So it's kind of the king of all toxins. So inflammatory bowel disease, plotted against the amount of Roundup used on soy and corn in the United States. The yellow line is the Roundup. The vertical red or brown lines are the inflammatory bowel disease reports, US statistics. You can see the correlation. Correlation does not prove causation, but when you have the understanding of the modes of action, you have clinical evidence, you have self-reports, you have animal feeding studies, you have livestock experience, then these data are very relevant. Similarly, deaths due to intestinal infection, rising in parallel. Peritonitis, another digestive tract disease. This is inflammatory bowel disease from acres of BT corn in the United States. Here's functional bowel disorder and acres of BT corn. If you show these charts to people who have those diseases, they usually are compelled to try something new. Glyphosate, as we heard from Bob, is used as a ripening agent on wheat, oats, legumes, etc. So it's in high concentrations in oatmeal, even though oats are not genetically engineered. Now, if you look at celiac disease, it was plotted against the amount of glyphosate sprayed on wheat. And you see a correlation there. Now, in my book, Seeds of Deception, which became the international best-selling book on GMOs in 2003, before every chapter, I had a one-page story of animals that avoided eating GMOs when given a choice. And so a farmer gave me a bag of uneaten corn and eaten corn. He had read and heard that squirrels avoided genetically engineered corn and planned to do a research study on his farm by nailing some corn on the cob, some corn ears on a tree, as his neighbor did. So he bought bags of each and left them in the workroom and forgot about it. But the next year he discovered them, and the mice had done the research for him. They broke into the bag of non-GMO corn and ate it. They broke into the bag of GMO corn and maybe tried a kernel, and that was it. Many animals, when given a choice, choose non-GMO, and I can go through the long list, but it's basically anytime there's someone around looking and seeing, especially in the early days when they had a choice. So based on this type of information, I'll give a talk usually for 45 minutes or an hour, and I'll go in through stories, the corruption of the FDA, the corruption of the EPA, Monsanto, etc. And I'll go into much more detail about the health dangers. And I'll start with the question of rate yourself from 1 to 100. But let's just test right now what we've shown just in terms of digestion. I'd like to have you rate yourself from 1 to 100, how vigilant you plan to be eating organic and non-GMO and non-glyphosate. Okay. So, I'm going to ask you, 0 to 20, raise your hand. For those in the stream, I can't see any hands raising. 20 to 40, raise your hand. There were some of you before, but there's none of you now. 40 to 60, raise your hand. No takers. 60 to 80, come on, 60 to 80, some. No hands. A 1, good. 80 to 100, raise your hand. All right, so I just showed you how you can help your clients avoid GMOs and Roundup. In how long was that? 15 minutes. In 15 minutes, and we just talked about digestion. And if you are giving a talk to a group, show the hands at the beginning, ask for the hands at the end, because the process of raising your hand, did you notice? Of saying yes, did you notice? It was like, okay, I guess I'm going to do this. It's actually part of the process of doing it, is raising your hand now. So you already have all the tools you need, just focusing on digestion. But let's take a look at low energy. Fatigue, brain fog, insomnia is a reason for low energy. If you look at the list, fatigue was number 2, brain fog was number 4. I used to ask audiences in one sentence, fatigue or brain fog, and it was always the number 2 below digestion. And insomnia, 1/3 of the people showed improvements in insomnia when they switched. Now, why is it that GMOs and Roundup could be causing these low energy problems? We already mentioned mitochondria. We already mentioned depletes minerals. If you're not getting the energy from the minerals, if you're not getting the factory in our cells, the mitochondria, to work, then we can end up with these problems. Now, it's interesting that if you look at the tissue of a young person and an old person as they have, and they try and find the difference, the major difference, and some say the only clear difference, is the number of functioning mitochondria. So we want to protect our mitochondria. Now, sleep. There's an interesting causal pathway. Monsanto bragged for years that glyphosate blocks the shikimate pathway. The shikimate pathway is found in plants, not in humans. So it'll kill plants, but it's safe in humans. You can drink it, don't. Now it turns out our gut bacteria use the shikimate pathway to produce L-tryptophan and tyrosine. When L-tryptophan produces serotonin, serotonin converts to melatonin. Melatonin governs our circadian rhythms and helps us go to sleep. So if we block the production of L-tryptophan in our guts, and then we now get rid of the glyphosate, now we're able to fall asleep because there's enough melatonin. Same with the dopamine, because the dopamine is produced from tyrosine, which is also blocked. The shikimate pathway also produces all these body-made medicines that all get blocked. So this is why insomnia in the United States, or one of the reasons I think, rose in parallel with the increased use of Roundup on soy and corn. This is discharges of sleep disorders all the time, all of them. Now, in the film Secret Ingredients, we took a dozen people who had switched to organic food, and we calculated what happened to them and their families. In Secret Ingredients, there's a family of 5 that had 21 chronic conditions between them. And they started improving the diet, and things got better and better. They cut gluten and soy and industrial commercialized milk and all these things. And things got better, but they were still managing disease. When they got rid of the GMOs and glyphosate, the 21 conditions went away. One of the boys who was autistic, by the time the film was shot, he's no longer on the spectrum. Same with another family. No longer on the spectrum, and the change happened when they switched to organic. Doesn't happen to all of them, but Michelle Perro, the pediatrician, said many of them, all it takes is a diet change. Now, what about cancer? You all know someone that knows someone that has cancer. And it turns out the World Health Organization said glyphosate is a class 2A carcinogen, probably a human carcinogen. They said it definitely causes cancer in animals, but there's not enough studies on humans to show that it causes cancer, which is a good thing. It does mutate the DNA, which can lead to cancer. And where it's sprayed, there's higher cancer rates. It's been linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, with 125,000 plaintiffs paid off already by Bayer, and that's just the beginning. You can see that 4.8% of the people that responded said they improved in their cancer when they switched, which means there was still time or there was enough power in that change. That's over 150 people. Animal feeding studies show devastating cancers. These are these are tumors that are up to 25% of the body weight. Here's some pretty devastating charts. This one has the percentage of GM soy and corn as the darker line, and the glyphosate applied to corn and soy as the red line. This is kidney and renal pelvis cancer. I'm going to name these cancers and move them quickly. This is liver cancer. This is liver and bile duct cancer. This is thyroid cancer. That line, that red line, that's the trend. If nothing else happened before After 1980, that's the trend of expected cancer rates. Deaths from leukemia, breast cancer. And in the film Secret Ingredients, we talk about this link to cancer. Secret Ingredients, by the way, is the number1 motivator for eating an organic diet we've ever found. So that's the short answer. Like, you can take some time and talk or say, just watch this. Give them a DVD or the link or whatever. Now, here's another list. Metabolic diseases, diabetes, obesity, hormonal problems, thyroid problems, lipoprotein metabolism. We saw 55% of the people that we surveyed had improvement in being overweight or obese. 30% hormone problems, 10.6% diabetes. Someone yelled diabetes in this room. Many of these are the same things that you were mentioning earlier. In animal feeding studies, they showed problems with insulin regulation. They showed changes in estrogen and testosterone ratios in pituitary damage. We can see the trend line for diabetes, age-adjusted, and then where it actually went compared to GMOs and Roundup. Deaths from obesity, similar. Deaths from disorders of lipoprotein metabolism. Liver and kidney problems, also linked. Kidney disease, 4.5% of people said they had improved in their kidney disease. It's interesting, Michelle Perot said she will treat an autistic, usually the boys, or there's more boys than girls, and she'll tell the whole family, switch to organic. So that the child is not eating separately. Everyone should eat organic. She said the whole family gets better. In one family, the father had serious kidney disease. They switched to organic. That's the only thing that he did, and his kidney disease nearly disappeared. The mother lost weight. The girl had improved on the ADHD. That went away. The whole family got better when they were switching to organic to support the autistic boy. People report getting better in kidney disease and fatty liver, livestock. I talked to one veterinarian, he said, when they introduced GMO feed, all these problems happened in the gut bacteria of the livestock. And when I did some autopsies, it looked like a bomb went off in the liver. And so they showed organ damage also in the animal feeding studies, even in Monsanto's. So this is a picture of, on the left, normal rat livers, and on the right, rat livers from rats that were fed GM soy. Rats that ate BT corn also had liver and kidney toxicity signs. So this was a Monsanto study where Monsanto said that rats passed with flying colors, but when scientists looked at the details, said there were signs of toxicity in just 90 days. So one of the scientists, Dr. Seralini, did the same protocol that Monsanto used, but applied it over 2 years and verified that there were massive problems with liver and kidneys. There was also premature death. There was also massive tumors that started in the next month after Monsanto's study ended. Those big tumors on the rats, that was from that study. But when they did a very careful analysis of the liver, they found that non-alcoholic fatty liver disease was created at parts per trillion, at tiny parts per billion. Do you have any idea how many Americans have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease? It's like 30%. And I think it's related to the amount of glyphosate in our food, and maybe in our rain too. Acute kidney injury, up with glyphosate. Death from kidney failure. Hepatitis C. Are GMOs and Roundup contributing to your neurological disorders? Autism, Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, brain fog, mood, anxiety, depression, memory, concentration. Take a look at what people reported. Brain fog, 52%. Anxiety, depression, and mood problems, 52%. Memory and concentration, 48%. Memory and concentration, 48%. That was a joke, you all missed it. Maybe you're not concentrating. Other mental disorders, 7.9%, and then there's autism, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's at the bottom. People report getting better from depression, violent behavior, attention span, memory loss, brain fog, anxiety, and autistic symptoms. I heard from farmers describe animals that were eating the GMOs. The pigs were fighting each other, being kicked, biting off the tails, being cannibalistic, antisocial behavior. Cows that are herd animals were kind of wandering on their own. Some of the animals looked like, and the farmer said this, looked like they had autism until they took them on a non-GMO diet. And they got better. In fact, I asked all these farmers what happened when you put them on a non-GMO diet. It wasn't an organic diet. And they all used one very technical term. Every single one of them. Very technical term, not having heard the other. He said the animals were happier. One guy started tearing up, said you could see it in their eyes. I remember talking to one farmer. His family had a very big pig operation. And he was in charge of the nursery, the young piglets. He had 3,000 of them. But they said he had the easiest job on the farm. And they always ribbed him about it. Until all of a sudden they started getting sick. And they was constantly injecting them with medicines. And they were sickly and tired. And he would come into the pen and they'd finally get up, but then they'd be lying down before he left. And for 14 years, his pigs were sickly. And he blamed it on the genetics of the pigs that were brought in the area from Canada, right? They blamed it on Canadian bacon. So he was thinking it's this new genetics, it's their diseases that are coming over. He asked another colleague that I met later, what can we do to improve our farm? And the guy says, why don't you try some non-GMO? So they grew non-GMO corn. They were still feeding non-GMO soy. And after 2-3 days, they were walking through the nursery, and the pigs were more active and they were more vibrant. And he was the two brothers, and they said, look at him. And so they joked, maybe it's that non-GMO corn, as a joke. By day 11, he called the friend that had recommended it and was stuttering and said, I tried the non-GMO corn and you wouldn't believe. And the guy was scared. What happened? It turns out it reversed everything that had happened over the 14 years. And they checked every single, they were measuring everything, the amount of water, the amount of antibiotics, everything dramatically turned around. The amount of infections, the amount of viruses, everything turned around. And the pigs were acting like pigs again. In animal studies, there was one person that measured the amount of aggression. She saw it, and so she did a whole study and found that her rats became more aggressive on GMOs. Deaths from Alzheimer's skyrocketed in parallel with the use of glyphosate. Deaths from Parkinson's, same thing. Hospital discharge of dementia. Deaths from senile dementia. ADHD. Anxiety. Schizophrenia. Suicide by overdose. Autism in 6-year-olds. Look at that. You see, everything else was based on the particular disease statistics and that year's glyphosate use. In this one, they did that year's plus the previous 3 years. So this is autism in 6-year-olds. They would have done 6 years exposure, but they didn't have the data. So when you look at the exposure over the last 4 years, the correlation becomes nearly perfect. A perfect correlation is 1. This is 0.9972. Doesn't prove causation. But a friend of mine, who happens to be a senior researcher at MIT and an expert at big data, wanted to figure out what was causing autism. So she took all of the research, all of the data, and brought it down, and with her background in biology, she could figure out why a particular deficiency or change would cause the symptoms of an autistic person. But she couldn't figure out what was creating those changes. So she took down all of the data on all the toxins she'd ever heard about, to see if they were causing the changes that she was seeing in the autistic subjects, and none of them fit. She went to a lecture by a friend of mine, Dr. Don Huber, professor emeritus from Purdue University. He's an expert at glyphosate. He used to work in part as a contractor for Monsanto, and then he discovered what was going on. And he gave a 2-hour lecture on glyphosate, and Dr. Seneff said she sat on the edge of her chair because everything he said matched perfectly with what she was looking for. She then pulled all the data down, and she said it fit hand in glove, and published on it. Then she took all the data down on gluten sensitivity and celiac. Same thing. And she started looking after disease after disease after disease. Many of these charts are hers. Finding this tight correlation, but because she's an expert, she was describing the metabolic pathways that linked the toxin to the changes to the symptoms, to the data. And if you look at the film Secret Ingredients, you can meet 2 boys who used to be on the spectrum. And in the film Genetic Roulette, which I made before that, there's 3 parents of autistic boys that talk about the improvements. They're still on the spectrum, but they will improve dramatically when they switch to organic. What about reproductive disorders? They are huge right now. Huge. In our survey, menstrual problems and infertility came up. There was a massive problem with livestock, birth defects, infertility, miscarriages, conception rate, litter size. That's featured more in the film Genetic Roulette. Animal feeding studies show all of these problems related to reproduction, infertility, birth defects, infant mortality, changes in the uterus, ovaries, and testes, abnormal sperm, sex hormones. You get the point. Glyphosate promotes birth defects. I spoke at the European Parliament once with a number of scientists summarizing the dangers of GMOs and Roundup. And there was a scientist from the Russian Academy of Sciences, Irina Ermakova, and she gave me these slides. So those are Russian-speaking rats. And they volunteered for a study on genetically engineered soy. And they were fed GM soy starting before the mothers, before they got pregnant, throughout the gestation, and then a couple of weeks into the newborn. And more than half of the babies died within 2 weeks, compared to 10% when the rats were fed non-GM soy. The GM-fed rats were also smaller, as you can see, on average, and most could not reproduce in the next generation. Hamsters that were fed GM soy for 2 years, by the 3rd generation, most lost the ability to have babies. They suffered slower growth, a 4 to 5-fold increase in infant mortality, and some had their birth defect with hair growing in their mouths. I'd never show that picture, it's just too disgusting. Mice that were fed GM soy had problems with the testicles and structure and function. Rats had changes in the uterus and ovaries. This is pictures of testicles of rats, normal, and those that were fed GM soy. Now typically, when I show this, I stop and take a long, slow drink of water to let this burn in and convince half the audience about the importance. Yeah. Should I change it?
Yes, please.
Yeah, all the guys are saying, please, please.
No, you're good.
All right. Here's an interesting study. I interviewed this guy on Facebook for the Institute for Responsible Technology. And he was looking at epigenetic effects. How many people know what epigenetics means? So we know that if you change your genes, they get inherited, right? But if you get exposed to a toxin, even exposed to trauma, you can change things on the DNA that tell which genes to express. And that turns out to be inheritable. So if one of your great-grandparents were involved in a famine, it might affect which genes are being expressed in you now. He had done studies on DDT, and he also did a study, he injected glyphosate